Awesome. Welcome for joining us today. I'm Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and podcast host. And today we've got a very special guest. We've got Miss Stephanie James, and we're going to be talking about igniting your best life and illuminating the world. Woohoo! What an amazing topic, right? Stephanie James is a psychotherapist, a speaker, a transformational coach, an author, a filmmaker, a podcast host, just an all-around badass. Her personal persona is to bring so much love and healing to the world as much as possible. And through her documentary, When Sparks Ignite, Stephanie shows the challenges we face that become the sparks that ignite us to the evolve and ultimately become the gift to each others that help illuminate the world. With a cast of some of the most inspirational thought leaders, wisdom keepers, and change makers on this planet, When Sparks Ignite will inspire you to thrive and heal your life. Welcome, Stephanie, to the show.
Thank you, Heather. So great to be here with you.
Absolutely. This is going to be so much fun today. And we're going to start off with watching a few clips from her show, and then we'll dive deeper into talking about the clips. We'll have some questions for her. I know we'll have some time for Q&A. And so buckle up. This is going to be a fun show.
Say that it's been a journey of remembrance, because so many times walking through the world that does not validate my way of seeing spirit, the invisible, the subtle, of having that direct line to source, that intimate relationship to the divine, the beloved, we might say. There were times that I forgot, got wrapped up in the culture, had brushes with addiction, with death, with the mystery of life, and not quite getting, well, why am I here? Why me? Why this? And so in those moments of forgetting, there was always a wash of remembrance that came. And there was always this infinite source, this deep well of love, of wisdom, of guidance, of grace, call it what you will, that has always been this current that's been carrying me, that what I have come to keep remembering as I walk through the world is that it's carrying all of us. It is all of us. And that there is no separation in that way.
The power of what's happening here, of a commitment to awakening and reawakening, a commitment to living in a way that creates that sense of a love-based village, a commitment to opening our hearts to others, not just in this we're going to talk about it way, but how do we really live it way? And to be with a circle of people who are pioneers and who are endeavoring to do that feels like a full circle in a way, you know, and I'm really honored to be able to sit and be with these folks.
It's very, very rare. Normally what happens at events where there are speakers who come in from out of town, they're kind of helicoptered in, you know. This one comes, he speaks, he or she speaks, they leave. We had a container yesterday, the day before this big event, where we were all together. We called it the Lights of the Round Table, around the table in 2 separate sessions. And what that did was it created a field of equality among the presenters that I see today we're able to extend to everybody. And there's no big egos in the room. It's simply people who recognize that they have a gift that they want to share, that they want to serve. And the spark is something that this is clearly her getting struck by lightning during a brainstorm, however we want to put it, and that her vision and her persistence and her intention created this one-of-a-kind event. So I'm totally thrilled and honored to be part of that.
Real meditation, besides the one we sit in, are the other 23 hours and 40 minutes a day. That's the real meditation. That's when life is continually serving us a perfect homeopathic remedy to catalyze the process we call evolution. So what is that place within us that sees with total clarity? Ralph Waldo Emerson stated this more beautifully than I've ever heard. He said, there's a principle underlying all things. There's something that underlies everything. He said, it's a simple, undescribed, undescribable presence residing silently within us. We are not here to do, but to let do, not to work, but to be worked upon. Just listen to what he said. He said, there's an aspect of our humanity that is totally indescribable. It's just a presence, and it's silent. It's not that voice that you're aware of. It's silent. It doesn't speak. It doesn't have a point of view. It just notices. It notices everything in the external. It notices everything in the internal. When the mind is active, something in you knows it. You know why you know it? Because the real you is observing it.
Goosebumps. I just absolutely, how many of you related to so much was said on those short, really powerful clips, right? Like, it was amazing. But so yes, you had this come to you in a download. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, Heather, I had never done a film before. Of course, I literally, I was a psychotherapist. Serendipitously, I had become a radio show and podcast host. And I was practicing. I always have to give Misa Hopkins some kudos and a shout out for this, because I was listening to Misa Hopkins' meditations at night. I had recently been divorced, and it was kind of this 3-month period where every night I would listen to this holding meditation of hers. And it was about 3 months into it when, after the meditation, I got this download, and it's like, I know some of the most brilliant minds and serving hearts on the planet. What if we brought them together for this really unique experience where it wasn't just presenters on a stage, but it was really these amazing thought leaders and change makers coming together and having their own event first, where the audience got to be a fly on the wall to hear those really true conversations, truly about the difficulties and the hard times that we face, that then become the match point that ignites something within us that becomes our gift to the world. And the ironic part of all of this is, literally at the time, I think I had 67 cents in my savings account. And yes. And I knew this film had to be created. So that was the beginning. And I have to tell you, it was a miracle unfolding, the way all of it came together.
I dive deeper into the miracle because now I'm curious. So where did the money come from?
Well, so it was phenomenal. We had people donate money. The presenters came free of charge, which was absolutely phenomenal, because, these people, that's their career. So they cost tens of thousands of dollars to bring on stage. And yes, I paid for everyone's hotel and I paid for everyone's food, but it was literally a miracle unfolding. And Jacob Israel Lieberman, who you just saw speaking, he had been on my show a couple of times. And I had this amazing gift from one of my guests, actually, who gifted me a trip to Maui. Well, it happened to be Jacob Israel Lieberman lives on Maui. And when he heard that I was coming, he said, oh, well, let's meet for breakfast. And it was really through that meeting, we began kind of talking about these things. And as soon as I had that download, I called him and I said, Jacob, I'm doing this film. I want you to be in it. And he said, I'm in. And I was also friends. I had Misa Hopkins on the show, and I was going to Santa Fe, where she lives with her husband, Jeff, to visit them. And Jacob said, oh my gosh, you're going to Santa Fe? Well, Larry Dossie and his wife, Barbie, live there. And oh my gosh, Sedina and George Caponelli, who are big television and film producers, they live there too. They're all friends of mine. Here's their contact information, get a hold of them. And it was so beautiful, Heather, because right away, I mean, everyone said, okay, yep, let's go out for dinner. The Dossie said, it was really beautiful. The Caponelli said, yep, let's meet for breakfast the next day. And everyone was in. And there was just this powerful moment when I was having dinner with the Dossies, when Larry reached across the table and put his hand over mine and just said, in his beautiful, just little Southern accent, you know, he said, Stephanie, how can I refuse?
I love it.
Yeah, and it was just really beautiful. And so, and then in meeting with the Caponellis, not only did they say, oh, we love this idea, we want to be a part of it, they said, by the way, let us introduce you to our award-winning film crew. And that was Doug Beechwood and Terra Media. And that's literally what sparked this whole film, When Sparks Ignite.
That's incredible. When you follow the path, it's amazing how the universe will show up to support you. And that includes with funds, right? Because you started off with 67 cents in your account, not knowing how this was going to come about, but you didn't waste time worrying about that. You got into action, right? And then the universe showed up and supported you, right? Like, how beautiful is that?
Yeah, 100%. And that has been my experience through all of my life. And never was it so pointed as at this time. I mean, it was just like, it reminded me of the whole Field of Dreams. Like, if you build it, they will come.
You just gave me goosebumps.
I gave myself goosebumps too. I mean, that literally is what happened.
That's awesome. Talk about having those kind of people hanging around. Like, what was that like off camera? Like, that had to have been so awesome. And you probably got some really cool stories from that as well.
Well, yeah, you know, I was so thrilled. I mean, my heart was just like exploding. Jacob Lieberman actually came out 2 days early, so before the filming, so he and I could just spend time together. And that was such a joy to have those meals, to have that time. And he has been one of my dearest friends, you know, since I'd had him on the show, we'd become very close, but it was like even more so, you know, after the trip to Maui and then him being here. And it was amazing, Heather. I have to tell you, with Jacob, it was so crazy. We'd go into a store. We had to go into Ace Hardware to get a screw for one of his suitcases that had lost a screw off the handles. And we go in there, and before you know it, we have like a circle of people around us, you know, just talking. And this woman, actually, it was so crazy. One of the women that worked there said, I recognize that voice. You're Stephanie James. I hear you on the radio. And of course, he loved that, you know, and pretty soon we're offering people free tickets to come to the live event. And I mean, and it's just magical the way he's got a magnetism about him. So he's such a beautiful, and truly, I consider him just an enlightened soul. But hanging around everyone together, what was crazy, Heather, is it felt like the most natural thing I had ever done. It was, all of a sudden, it was like being in a zone. And there was times I'd have to look around and almost pinch myself. You know, I'm having a conversation with Larry Dossie, who I had read his book and interviewed him on the show, One Mind. I mean, definitely someone that I just kind of held up on a pedestal. The most down-to-earth, funny, kind, sweet man. And he and his wife have such a beautiful connection that's just palpable as you're around them. And so, you know, I'm conducting an interview at one point. You'll see in the film, there's these individual interviews, and I have a personal assistant who's coming up saying, do you want a sandwich? Do you want some coffee? And I'm like, am I dreaming? How is this all happening?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. So, you know, it was such a joy. And that was the really cool thing about the 2 days of filming before the live event. You know, because we ate meals together, we laughed together, we prayed together, we meditated together, we danced together. A really good friend of mine who wrote the original score for the film, Steve Ertl, he came and performed at one of our dinner parties. And then my son-in-law, who's the lead singer and guitarist of this awesome honky tonk band called Sugar Britches, came and played at the dinner, and we all danced. And it was just the alchemy that was created in those days, Heather. I mean, I think that's what's so palpable on the film, because it was so different than other events, where the presenters come, like Steve Behrman was sharing, you come, you present, you leave the stage, and nobody talks. And instead, we formed this beautiful just circle within ourselves that was so lovely. And those sparks that we ignited within one another, that's what was shared, and that's what was spread on that last day to this audience of about 150 people. And you could just watch how cool people responded as the presenters would get off the stage and go sit in the audience. They were a part of it. Like, we're all in this together. It was a totally even playing field. It was really beautiful.
Man, I wish I could have been around for that. That sounds incredible, because we live just, one town over from each other, but we just recently met each other through this, endeavor. So I'm super excited to call Stephanie a new friend, and excited to see where this is going to go. Speaking of going, I know there's a golden thread kind of throughout the film of how each one of our individual contributions matter, right? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the person in the film who really represents that is a client that I had who really wanted to be in the film. She said, I want to be a part of this, because the podcast, the people that are in this film have dearly affected and deeply affected my life. And so Debbie is in the film, and you'll see her. So she kind of represents the everyday person. Like, it's all of us that have access to this, of being lit from within. And you see that golden thread through the film of her having gone through just horrific life experience, like being in a very abusive marriage for about 40 years. And her transformation, as when she came to me and I saw her, and this is so many years ago now, probably, gosh, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago now, and she could hardly keep her head up. I mean, she literally would cry through the entire session. I saw her 2 times a week. And then you see her at the end of the film, and it kind of follows her own story, where I wish I would have, I think about this now, and I wish at the very end I would have at least put up that she then became a speaker, and she became someone who, through her own platform and blogs, was helping other women in abusive relationships leave those relationships. So again, turning those difficulties into what becomes our gift to the world.
That's absolutely incredible. Yeah, that would have been really powerful to show that change. But I really loved following her story through, not that I love hearing about the trauma, the abuse, but I love when people can transmute that, right? They can take the dark and turn it into the light. I know there were some more important, deeper messages that you took away from this experience. What were some of those?
Well, and real quickly, just to tag on to the end of the thing with Debbie, because I do think one of the important pieces in this film too is that oftentimes we do, there's intertwining golden threads, if we can say that, because the people that were sharing, so whether it was, Steve Behrman, or, we hear things from Stefan Schwartz and people that have done major, Stefan Schwartz is who's who in America, who's who in the world. He's done huge change, historically. He's helped cultivate amazing change in our world as a research scientist. And here he is sharing very vulnerable information. He's sharing his own story about when he went into an absolute depression and kind of woke up. He shares about being at a party at Truman Capote's. And he was doing films at the time, very young, like 21, and had this wake up call where he went, I can't do this anymore. There's this moment he looks into, he said, like this gilded mirror, and just says at this party, and just says, I don't like who I see anymore. And so I think the golden thread is, it's hopefully the film is showing that we're all there. We're all that person that goes through, none of us are exempt. I always say nobody gets out of childhood unscathed, but nobody gets out of life unscathed. So it's not about, let's focus on our sad stories. It's saying, let's really though acknowledge that we have a common human story. And some of that is going to be pain and suffering. And some of it is going to be triumph of the human spirit. It is going to be, how did we take those difficult times and then truly cultivate what is strong within us, what is resilient within us? And how did we rise back up out of the ashes like the phoenix? I think that's the importance of that golden thread.
And that's so important because I think we can forget as humans, right? Like, so we do a show with Wayne Dyer's daughters. And, I'm thinking in my head, they were brought up by Wayne Dyer, right? Like these girls have got no problems, no issues with self-esteem. They just, everything is peachy keen for them. And then you have them come on the show and share very vulnerably some very heavy, heartbreaking stuff that they've been through recently. You hear their, self-esteem issues, you hear their self-doubt, and it's a reminder that nobody is untouchable when it comes to, the human condition, right?
Totally. And how important, because even the people we respect and we might hold really high esteem for, it's not about not respecting them. It's not putting them above us. I love one of the things Jacob Lieberman taught me, and as the question that followed that you asked was, what were some of the deeper messages? Jacob Lieberman has said to me so many times, we're all the same height. Mm-hmm. Which I love that, because what that truly says is not one of us is better than the other. Not one of our experiences is more important than the other. Yeah, some of us write books or do films or are speakers and we put it out there in a different way, but every single person's story matters and is valuable, and that each person's contribution to the whole matters.
110%, absolutely. And so speaking of matters, right, were you talking about on the poster, it says your healing matters, so what is the importance of this? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, and I have to say, Heather, on the poster, one of the things that was really important for me in those 3 words was to say your period healing period matters, period. To drive home that point that each one of us are essential threads in the fabric of humanity. And so as we heal, as we allow ourselves to heal, and this is really a central message in the film, then we really can become that pebble in the pond, where then the concentric circles of love and healing come from us, and they affect, there's a vibration, as there's a frequency as we heal. And so as we do that, we help lift others up. We allow them to see that within them, that potential, that spark within them. And so it's the thing, what is it? The rising, I don't know, the rising tide lifts all ships. That is exactly true here.
110%. I don't know how many times people are like, but if so-and-so were just, or if they would just, or if they would just, and I learned the hard way a long time ago that if you just focus on cleaning up your side of the street, your energetic resonance, your vibration, right? It's amazing how that affects the people around you. You talked about like that ripple effect. A person walks into a room and they've got funky energy, and then what it just does to the whole room, right? So it's just another beautiful reminder of how powerful each one of us really are, right? And getting into that our own individual power and not worrying, about what so-and-so is doing and this person's not doing that, just really embodying their power. It's amazing what we can each do to help heal this world, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the call. That's really the call, and that's really the purpose of this film. And honestly, Heather, it's the purpose of all the work that I do as a psychotherapist, as a transformation coach, and I know as a fellow podcaster, I mean, those are the messages we're trying to get out on our podcast. And we're trying to empower people to say, yes, you too are such an important contributor, no matter what your circumstance or situation is. And, I have to share with you, a lot of times when I get interviewed, people will ask me about the spark, because the spark is my brand. my first book. It's, you know, the name of the podcast is Igniting the Spark. And of course the film, When Sparks Ignite. Like, what's the deal with the spark? And and you know what I have to tell people is what I truly believe the spark is the spark is our essence. You know, it's the part of us that truly there's nothing that can put that out. And life circumstances or difficult situations might feel like it covers it up. But then our work truly is, how do we excavate that? How do we excavate that so we can really shine that light and share that light with the world? Because we're in a world that desperately needs it. And the cool thing is we don't have to get caught in that helplessness or hopelessness. There's something we can do about it. And you just beautifully said it. You know, it's doing our own work, cleaning up our side of the street. When we do that, we're truly helping. I mean, think about it. I love this example too. I have to tell you, I share this with people when I'm talking about cognitive behavioral therapy and how our thoughts affect our feelings and affect our actions. I used to live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And
Me too. That's
so
crazy.
you know, like such a windy city. Like,
oh my gosh.
I would
it's
always
horrible.
say, never a good hair day.
No.
And there were mornings when I would wake up and I'd look out the window and the wind would just be, you know, blowing all the trees over. And I'd go, oh my God, I hate living here. Why do I live here? And that thought right there would lead to feelings of, you know, kind of this feeling trapped. I'd feel anxious. The day was the same, but my feelings about it, my thoughts about it created this experience. And what I shared with people is, you know, when I finally understood how that thought, feeling, then how I would act would connect, I learned how to do it differently. Because on those days, if I was like, oh, the weather, ugh, and I'd stop at Starbucks, which I always did every morning on the way to my office, you know, if I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling like, oh, there's nothing I can do about this, I'm not greeting people. I'm not being friendly, and no one's interacting with me. They're like, here's your coffee. Right. And
next.
And so the essential point here is that it was the same kind of day. The wind, as you know, in Cheyenne, most days was that super blowing, you know, windy day. And I caught the thought as I started to think, oh, this wind, I went, okay, wait a minute. You work inside. You're not outside in this wind at all. Yeah, you have to walk from your car, you know, into your office, but you don't work in this wind. And there is amazing air quality in this town. And then I started thinking, you know, and I love this little town. I loved raising my kids in a small town. They got to be big fish in a small pond. And I was like, there's so much I love about this little community. So then I'm going to the exact same Starbucks, but instead, as I walk in, I'm greeting people and I'm like, hey, how are you? So good to see you. And more than a few occasions, I had a barista say, this is on me today. We just love when you come in. And I can't tell you the amount of free cups of coffee I got there.
Shut up. I'm going to have to try that.
Just be your glowing, amazing self, Heather. And I'm telling you, it happens.
How funny. Yeah. We used to joke when I lived in Cheyenne that if we looked outside and saw that the wind wasn't blowing, you know, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, the wind's not blowing. And my mom would be like, shh, it'll hear you, you know, don't jinx it. Cause yeah, the struggle is real in Cheyenne with the wind. So who is this film for? You know, really who can benefit most from watching this film?
You know, to say everyone is such a blanket statement, but I would say honestly, people that are 18 or over, this really is for everyone, because it's really about that, you know, as you're watching these film people, and maybe people in their 20s, I don't know how interested they would be. I know that, you know, I can at least say my younger daughter, who's 26, she and her friends, when this film first came out, were like, oh my God, like this is amazing. And because I think we also need to help people understand there's a lot of theme in this film as well about consciousness and the oneness. And I think we need to start introducing that idea as early as possible. You know, and I guess especially in people's 20s when I think about it, because so often, you know, in our 20s, we're going through trying to figure out our identity, and we go through angst of, what do I really want to do? And who do I really want to be? And how awesome to start tapping into that sense of like, we're actually never alone, that we're actually connected to that divine source that is in all of us as all of us. And what a huge difference that would make through our journey.
Absolutely. I just got all warm and goosebumpy just thinking about it. So yeah, what an amazing gift you are, what an amazing gift this film is. Like, it's so incredible. So where do you go from here? Like, what's next for you?
Well, so interestingly enough, if you want to keep talking about, the whole serendipity of the film, it's continued. And a year ago, June, I call it my Trifecta Experience, because at the time, June 24th of that year, which would have been 2022, all in one day, when Sparks Ignite came out for the first time on Plex Network, my second book, Becoming Fierce, came out that day, and we started filming the Becoming Fierce series, which is going to be actually it's going to be the season. It's part of a series called Ignited, and again, absolutely through serendipity, Sedina Caponelli, and I have to say, everyone in that film, we all became not only great friends, but we've stayed great friends. We've been to each other's homes and we've traveled together and we've had just amazing connection. And so what was really beautiful is Sedina Caponelli had said to me at one point, after when Sparks Ignite came out, she said, or before, after it was done, it hadn't come out yet, but it was done. She said, I have this feeling that the next film crew you work with, it's going to be all female. And they're really going to see your vision. And it's going to be this experience you could have never expected. So again, oddly enough, a few times a year, I do go down to Santa Fe now. And I was headed down to Santa Fe. And she said, you need to meet Anna Dara. And I get on a little Zoom call with Anna Dara. And I said, hey, we're talking about what's going on. And I said, I'm actually headed to Santa Fe this weekend. I'm going to meet with our mutual friend, Sedina. And she goes, well, I live in Santa Fe too. Why don't we meet and have coffee? And I met and had coffee with her. And Anna owns Film Nest Studios, and they have had award-winning films. They did an amazing documentary. Now I'm forgetting the name of it. There's one of them in Denver. You might know about it. There's one in Denver and one in Santa Fe. It's like this wild experience. And they did a documentary on the making of, I'll come up with it. I'll remind you. But anyway, long story short, we have this amazing connection. She's like, I tell her, I'm like, I want to do this next event. I'm feeling like it will be women. And she says, I want to do it. I want to film it. I want to be a part of it. And it was amazing. That was the miracle. That film, we raised $30,000 in 24 hours when we had to make that film go. We had the most incredible investors come in, 20 women, 6 international thought leaders from all over the place, all women film crew for 3 days of powerful transformation. And so all of that was cut on film. And right now we're in the stages of working on the pilot. And it's just been absolutely a joy and a thrill. And I'm so excited to share this next chapter with the world.
When does that come out?
We are hoping that by next fall, it is going to be up and running, and maybe even on Humanities Stream. We're thrilled about it. It'll be a 6-part series. And our vision is that we'll continue to do this. So once or twice a year, we'll be having these remote retreats where people can come. International thought leaders will be there. And we do the same thing. I don't know if people haven't seen the film. In the middle of the film, there's this really cool happening where all 12 of us sit around a round table, and we call it Lights of the Round Table. So in this series, that is duplicated, where you're a fly on the wall and you get to see behind the scenes these conversations of the 6 of us sitting around these tables and talking about what's been happening in the retreat. and what our own experience has been, because the personal transformation wasn't just the participants, let me tell you. We had the beautiful Cynthia James, and if people know Pauline Wynn, she is an amazing woman who came over from Sydney, Australia. Nisa Hopkins was there again, Kari Schaefer, and Natalie Ledwell, who's done so much amazing work with Joe Dispenza and Mind movies. So it was just a powerful event. And so those are the things, Heather, that light me up so much that I can't wait to share with people.
I can't wait. That's absolutely incredible. And I know you got something coming up here soon, another one to be published on Humanity Stream. It's called Living Wisdom for a Changing World. And I've got a little bit of a description on that. Special guest, Mark Napo, Jacob Israel Liberman, Natalie Ledwell, Allison Carmine, and Tariq
Monib.
Thank you, Tarek Monib. The 7 influential thought leaders, change makers, wisdom keepers from around the world for a one-on-one kind of inspirational experience. You'll receive trusted insight, distilled wisdom, useful tools, and the secret sauce to ignite your own life in a lasting and powerful way. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I love that. This comes from a really large event that I had done. And it was What We Need to Know Now, Living Wisdom for a Changing World, with 22 international thought leaders. We had people from Romania and Switzerland and Australia and India, all over the globe. And so we condensed it down because that live event was 4.5 hours. And so what we've done is my amazing producer, Tony Vicini, always have to give him a shout out. He helped me bring together the 7 of us so that it's really, Mark Nepo is such a phenomenal person and poet. And of course, people saw at the beginning of the show, Jacob Israel Lieberman in action. And just to hear these messages, the whole premise and what had come to me again, I love my divine downloads. I just feel so blessed because when I get that hit, I'm like, okay, like you said, Heather, it's like, I know that's the time to take action. That's the time to step into it. It's not a time to step back or go, because I know for me, I can get into my small self ego and go like, why me? I'm just,
who am I?
Yeah. And I'm reminded of Marianne Williamson saying, we have to say, we have to get away from this, who am I, to be this, and step into the larger versions of ourselves. And again, to remember that each one of us is divinely connected. So when that download comes in, not only to listen, but to act. And so when that came in, again, I got 10 minutes from each of those presenters. And each of those 10 minutes I would ask them, what is the essential wisdom? What is it that is going to be the most helpful in the world right now? What do people need to know? And so that's what these people are sharing. And for those people that don't know, Tarek Monib did the film Free Trip to Egypt. And it was absolutely a phenomenal film. If you have a chance to see it, I don't know, this is right before the pandemic when it came out. And it was a beautiful experiment where he took a group of people. He literally would go around with a cohort of his to Trump rallies and all these different things and say, hey, would you like to come on a free trip to Egypt? And being Muslim and trying to expose people to like this thing of like, we're all human and that we're all connected regardless of religion or race or sex. And it was such a gorgeous film showing how people that didn't even speak the same language could have compassion and connection. And these Americans came and lived with these Egyptian families, and it's all recorded. So his insight and his depth, he and I also became very good friends. Again, that was one of those divine, moments when I watched that film. It was shown in a local theater here. It was being shown, you could sign up for it and bring it to your local theater. And so we had watched it. And I actually, when I saw that film, I said, I'm going to interview him. I'm going to interview Tarek. And lo and behold, a connection dropped in and I was able to have him on the show. So becoming friends with him and sharing his beautiful wisdom in this piece is such a joy. And people will love Allison Carmen. I love her book is she just did a book, A Year Without Men. But her first book was The Gift of Maybe. And it's how we move out of like the anxiety created by the what if about the future, and how we can move into the possibility of maybe. So I think there's going to be, Heather, lots of gems and lots of just practical wisdom. I mean, the important thing for me was like, we don't need to have, a huge esoteric or highly intellectual conversation that people are trying to figure out. It's like, give me the tools, give me the distilled wisdom, give me something that I can literally bring into myself and start doing now that's going to move the needle in my life.
Absolutely. Can I get an amen? That's incredible. So we've got a little time left before we close today. Does anybody have any thoughts, comments, anything you would like to share or ask Stephanie? If you don't feel like you want to come up on camera, you can put it in the chat and I'll read it out to her for her to answer. But now would be a great time if you want a little one-on-one action with Stephanie James. Stephanie, we heard a lot about the show. What do you like to do for fun? What do you do when you're not making amazing movies and podcasts and writing books?
See, and that's, Heather, that's the funny part is that I love writing. So, that is something that I do. I just started a new book yesterday.
Shut up.
I did. And so yesterday morning and this morning, that's what I woke up and did. But, my husband and I, my children are grown. And so we have just such a cool connection, and we're both avid meditators. We love to hike. We love to camp. We love getting together with our friends and just, we love to travel. I'd say that's one of our biggest things. I just got back from leading a retreat in Sayulita, Mexico, a women's retreat for a week. And just had a phenomenal experience. And so, we're both readers and big time into our family. So I feel super blessed. My family my parents live 6 blocks away. And so we walk down there and have coffee with them once a week. My cousin and his wife and their kids literally live next door. Like I am looking at their house right now.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah. And both my daughters and my grandsons live in town. So that's just a huge part of our life. On Saturday, that's where you could find us at my grandson Gunny's basketball game.
That's incredible. How old are your grandkids?
11 and 9, soon to be 10. Yeah.
Still in the cute, good age. That's awesome.
They are. They're both just amazing. And I guess, this is just so random, but I have to tell you, what I love about these kiddos, and I may have told you this, Heather, the first time that we met, what I love about my oldest grandson, August, is he's one of these kids that's like heart of the world. At 11 years old. And at 5 years old, I remember taking him for walks. We'd take my dog Jules for a walk around the block, and we'd come back to the house and his pockets would be stuffed full of trash that I wasn't even aware he was picking up as we were walking around. I'm like, August, what are you doing? And the kids call me TT. And he said, TT, every day is Earth Day. And I was just like, oh my God, he just salt of the earth. And Gunny, his younger brother, he was in the NICU the first few days he was born. And I always say he's just a wild little onion. He is, I say that he's a scrapper, and he is the funniest, smartest, amazing little artist. So much like his mama, my daughter Acacia. So I just feel super blessed to have this really beautiful and very, very tight, intact family.
That is absolutely incredible. Coming from a person who's the exact opposite, who I actually no longer speak to my parents or my siblings. I am very jealous, and I'm glad that you know what a blessing that is, because that's not always the case for all of us, right? So how beautiful that you get to experience that. That's amazing.
Well, and Heather, and I just have to tell you real quickly, you'll have to read my book, Becoming Fierce, because because the parents I'm referring to is my mom and my stepfather. And I went through my own journey with my own father and spent several years not speaking with him as I grew up. And literally, it's a huge story in my life. Um, and he just passed away a year ago in December, and I hadn't spoken to him for 6 years. So I know that experience. I know that pain. And I think it's an important thing that we talk about. And so that's why I wrote about that, because I as well, I did not get through childhood or my life unscathed at all and have had huge difficulties and huge challenges. And you'll see in the film, when I talk about in the film, my oldest daughter who struggled with addiction and alcohol for 10 years, for a decade. And now being clean 6.5 years, clean and sober. Again, that journey of triumph of the human soul has been so powerful.
Absolutely. One I know all too well. I imagine most of us here do. That's why we're drawn to this type of work, right? Dark night of the
Yeah.
soul.
No doubt. No doubt.
We got a comment from Facebook. You've become an inspiration to so many people, Stephanie. I'll always be rooting for you. Woo-hoo.
Oh,
It came from Cameron.
oh, Cameron, thank you. Such a sweetheart. Thank you, Cameron.
Awesome. All righty. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and wrap up for today. What an amazing show. What an honor to have you on and to welcome your work to the Humanities Team platform. Like, this is just incredible. And you're such a perfect fit for, what we're trying to do here at Humanities Team. So thank you for being the spark, right? And being that person who gives other people permission to be the spark, right? Because sometimes that's what's needed. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Heather. You are such a joy and delight. Just love you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Is there a way to get in touch, guests on the podcast? I'm not quite sure I know what you mean, Guverman.
And if anyone wants to reach out and contact me, they can get a hold of me on my website, which is stephaniejames.world. So if they have questions about the podcast or books, films, events, that's the place to do it.
I highly recommend checking out our podcast. Like, I've been binging it you'll see my comments in the comment section, because she's just had so many incredible guests on there. And we've been swapping guests back and forth on each other's podcasts, because we're like, ooh, have you talked to this person yet? It's been awesome.
It's been so fun.
Yeah, awesome.
So thank you, Heather, and thank you everybody that's here and that's a part of this. It really does take each one of our sparks to help illuminate the world.
Absolutely. Have a healthy day, everybody.